My family moved around a lot when I was young, and we lived in a lot of different places. But then the things that kind of stayed constant were the things in the house. And I became really connected to like these kind of domestic objects. And I guess that I'm asking questions about like why? You know, why am I so interested in that? Why do I want to have this thing around me? Why do I find this particular object beautiful? You know, how do I have a visceral reaction to an object? Ceramics has almost always dealt with the domestic. I mean, people with like dishes and sinks and toilets and stuff inside the house. And then the figurine, and I became really interested in the figurine. So then once that happens, I started to think about what were these figurines about? And so now I make these animal sculptures that are based on animals, that they look like animals, but I'm putting them in these kind of figurine settings. And it's this way, it's this weird, like, you know, topiary or bonsai of an animal where I'm trying to confine it into what I want it. And then, so then I can ask, like, why is it in human nature to want to control or to make things like pleasing or beautiful? It's like the figurine is all about sentimentality and idealization and this hope. But then the reality is always a disillusionment. You know, it's like when you're a kid and you're driving on the highway and you see a bunch of sheep in the field and they look like these soft, white, fluffy clouds. And then you get up to them close in person and they're covered with like sheep shit and burrs and they're ratty and there's dirt all over them. I mean, it's I guess I'm trying to say that like the real world is kind of disturbing and that we always want to gloss it over. But then when you get close, it's kind of ugly. But then there's a beauty in that. You know, that beauty of it being ugly is almost more important. I don't use molds in the same way that many people use molds. I started making molds of my work not because I wanted to make multiples, but because I was not having much success with getting the porcelain to survive the firing process at the scale I was working at, and slip casting ensures a uniform thickness and makes it a much stronger piece. So I started making molds just to get my piece to survive. But occasionally I can use a series or a set of molds that I have and create a different piece. Like I won't make the same piece again, but using the lamb or some altered version of the lamb, I can make another piece. I don't think of myself as a ceramic artist, I think of myself as a porcelain artist, because that's what I tend to love. It's that the richness of the surface of the porcelain with the glaze on it that I kind of keep coming back to. I need a gas kiln to high fire because I use something called a reduction firing process. So while the piece is heating up with the gas burners, I reduce the amount of oxygen, so it starts to actually pull it out of the clay and the glaze and will alter the appearance of the piece. It'll be a little bit more of a blue-gray in the reduction. I mean, I'm hoping that the work has this kind of ethereal quality because I want it to feel a little bit other, you know, that I'm not actually trying to make the most realistic sculpture of an animal or a dog. I'm making almost kind of like the idea of an animal. Like a lot of people in ceramics, I came to ceramics as a potter, making pots on the wheel. At some point in grad school, the work started becoming very altered and so carved and so distorted that it was no longer within any realm of being functional. And I was really just hanging on to that to like kind of give my work meaning. And it was the summer before my last year. I had wanted to introduce some insects onto some soup tureens that I was making as a way to talk about kind of the cycle of life. But I realized I'd had so much fun making those little models of the insects. And for my last year in grad school, kind of focused on making these pieces that were talked about ideas of design or function combined with insects, but no longer actually had any kind of function. And that's what got me finally into letting go functional thrown pieces. I think I wanted to do it for a lot longer than I'd finally had the courage to kind of jump off that and change. I always try to think like, why do I do this? Why do I make this work? Like, why does the world need more objects? And Why do I spend so much of my energy and time on it? And I don't really know the answer to any of those questions, but something happens when you're in the studio and you're making work, and it doesn't happen all the time, where you do, and I guess I would call it like being in the zone, where some time stops or stands still or moves so fast you don't realize that it's moving. And you just get into this totally present experience where you're making a mark and you're looking at their mark and you're responding to the mark. It's as close as I could come to thinking about spirituality or meditation or these things that bring you some great amount of like pleasure or peace. And that, yes, occasionally will happen in the studio. And I think that's what you're always chasing.